let's start off with a new chapter that is Inside Our Earth. In this chapter, we're going to talk about what is in the interior of our Earth. We have different layers to our personality. When we meet someone, we feel pretty friendly with someone. We feel hatred, we feel love. These are layers to our personality. If you look at an onion that your mom cuts every day, that has different layers to it. When we go down to the atmosphere again has different layers. In the same manner, the earth has different layers. The three layers that we're going to talk about our earth is crust, mantle, and the core. This three being the major three levels or the major three layers of the earth. Let's talk about the first one, that is the crust. The crust is the topmost layer of the earth. And it is also the thinnest of all. But it has a solid outer layer. This is where you find the rocks. If we talk about the volume, it is just 0.5% volume of the earth. It is 35 kilometers on the continental mass and 5 kilometers on the oceanic floor. Let's come down to the continental mass. When we come down to the continental mass, it comprises of Cl. Cl is SiAl. Let's try to break it down. When we break it down, Si stands for silica and Al stands for aluminium. If these being the chemical symbols, if we put them together, it comes down as Cl. If we move down to the oceanic floor, I already mentioned it is 5 kilometers on the oceanic floor. Now, what does the oceanic crust comprise of? The oceanic crust comprises of Cma. The chemical symbol for silica is Si and magnesium is Ma. So we put them together, it is Cma, that's SiMa. As I mentioned earlier, you'll find different types of rocks on it. That is the sedimentary, the igneous and the metamorphic rocks on this layer. Let's move on to the second layer of the earth. That is the mantle. Mantle being the second layer is just below the crust. It has the hot magma and it also has the semi-solid rocks. What does the term semi-solid mean? The term semi-solid means it is neither solid, neither liquid. It is in between. It is again 16% of the volume of the earth. But it is 2,900 kilometers deep below the crust. The oceanic thickness, the oceanic crust is 5 kilometers to 10 kilometers thick, and this is where we find basalt. When we come down to the continental crust, it is 30 kilometers to 50 kilometers thick, and this is where we find the granite. In our day-to-day lives, we see granite everywhere. You must be thinking, where? In our ancient times, you must have seen your grandmoms actually grinding that chutney or probably and idli flour to make idlis. The grinding stone that is used is made from granite. It has bigger granules. That's why it is used to go ahead and grind those flour, those grains and the spices. The third layer that we're going to talk about is the core. Now, actually the core is divided into two layers, that is the inner core and the outer core. But your textbook talks core as a whole. So let's go according with the textbook and it will be core as a whole. The core is the deepest and hottest layer. And it has a radius of 35 kilometers and it consists of nickel and iron. The chemical symbol for nickel is Ni and for iron it is Fe. So we put together and it becomes knife, that's NiFe. In the outer core, the metals are found, but those are in the hot liquid form. And in the inner core, it has iron and it is mostly in the solid form. Now we're going to talk about rocks. What do we understand by the term rocks? Can we make rocks? We can't, right? Now, let's first discuss the definition of rocks. Any natural mass of mineral matter that makes up the Earth's crust is called a rock. Now, let's try and break it up. The first layer, let's talk about any natural mass. A natural mass, so anything that comes out of the nature, something that is not human made, what a human being or we as human beings cannot make, a natural mass. That consists of mineral matter. Minerals again is produced by the nature. We as human beings cannot produce minerals. Any natural mass of mineral matter, and that makes up the Earth's crust. The Earth's crust is the outer layer. The outer layer comprises of rocks, as we discussed in the first part of the Earth's layer. It's called as rock. Now the rocks can be of different color, size, texture. Your textbook talks about 3 types of rock. The first one is the igneous or the primary rocks. The second one is the sedimentary rock, and the third one is a metamorphic rock. First, let's go ahead and understand these 3 types of rocks in detail. We're going to also talk about the rock cycle, and let's try to go ahead and compare the rock cycle with the water cycle. Let's start off with the igneous or the primary rocks. Anytime during your exams, if they ask about the primary rocks, remember primary is the same as the igneous rocks. Where does the word igneous come from? It is a Latin word, ignis, that means lava coming out from the volcano. What is that? It is a fire, right? So ignis is fire. You might be understanding the word ignite is lighting. How do you light something? With the help of fire, right? So remember, ignis is fire. Fire, how does that fire come down on the earth? In the form of volcanoes. So igneous is a Latin word that is ignis, that means fire. Let's understand volcano before we understand the further subdivision of igneous rocks. There might be a small confusion about what volcano is and what is an earthquake. You might be trying to understand them both together, as volcano and earthquake are both the same. But actually, there's a difference. Wherever there is a volcano that erupts, that is, the lava comes out on the surface of the earth. The lava is nothing but the molten magma. That is what the volcano is all about. Now, let's come down to the earthquake. When a volcano erupts, there are vibrations. These vibrations are called earthquake. These vibrations are on the Earth's surface. Like what happened in the last month in Nepal, that was an earthquake. The igneous rocks is basically divided into 2. That is the extrusive and the intrusive. The igneous rocks again formed because of the lava coming out of the volcano. The molten magma that is erupted during a volcano. Let's come down to the first subdivision, that is the extrusive rocks. The term extrusive. Let's understand the first 2 letters, that is EX. Relate EX with external. When you relate EX with external, the word external means anything that is on the outside. So remember, when the molten magma that erupts out of a volcano, that comes out of the volcano and then it solidifies on the Earth's surface, that is how the extrusive igneous rocks are formed. The basic example of extrusive rock is basalt. Now, the second type is the intrusive rocks. Intrusive, let's again break it up. Intrusive, IN stands for internal. Internal means anything inside. Whenever there is a volcano that erupts, the molten magma or the lava comes out on the Earth's surface and it cools down on the surface. That is external. But when the molten magma cools deep inside the Earth crust, that is when the intrusive rocks are formed. These grains are large, but on the contrary, the extrusive rock, the grains are fine. The intrusive rocks you can understand as the granite or the grinding stone, as I explained earlier. The grinding stone that we use on a day-to-day basis, that is an example of intrusive rock. Let's talk about the second subdivision, that is the sedimentary rock. The term sedimentum is from Latin. What does the term sedimentum mean? It means anything that settles down. Before we understand the word sedimentary rocks, we have to first understand erosion. Imagine there's a big mountain, a mountain that has a lot of rocks in it. We go to that mountain, we pick up a small stone or a small part of the rock and you throw it away. When you throw that away, what are you doing? You are just acting as a medium to go ahead and pull out that rock from the mountain and throw it away. When you throw that away, you're just acting as a medium of transportation. In the same manner, because of heat, because of water, all these things, the rocks actually crack. When they crack, they fall down or they hit each other and they crack down. When they do so, they just break down. They just break down to form small particles, small fragments, and this is what is called as sediments. So first the erosion takes place, and then when the erosion happens, the eroded fragments are further transported. They are transported because of water and wind, and they're deposited at a different place. Now what happens? You put all these small sediments or small fragments together, and then they are compressed, they are hardened to form sedimentary rocks. Sandstone is an example of a sedimentary stone or rock. The third type talks about metamorphic rocks. The term metamorphos comes from Greek, which means change of form. Igneous rocks and sedimentary rocks, under great pressure and temperature, they turn into metamorphic rocks. Now let's go and understand these three of them all together, right? Igneous, anything that comes out on the surface because of the volcano that erupts in the form of lava. If it cools down on the surface, it is extrusive rocks. If it cools down deep inside, it is intrusive rocks. Sedimentary, the first process that has to happen is the erosion. When the erosion happens, then those eroded particles or fragments are transported at a different location and deposited at a different location by the wind or the water. These loose sediments are again compressed or hardened to form layers of rocks. These layers of rocks are called sedimentary rocks. Metamorphic rocks. Both the igneous rocks and the sedimentary rocks put together under great temperature, under great pressure, they form metamorphic rock. You also got to remember an example of metamorphic rock, that is clay. Clay changes into slate and limestone. Metamorphic rock. Clay changes into slate under great heat and pressure. In the same manner, limestone changes into marble, again in great heat and pressure. So this is how we have discussed the three types of rocks, that is igneous or primary rocks, sedimentary rocks, and metamorphic rocks. Rocks are used basically in our day-to-day lives. It is helpful in making roads, houses, and buildings. Let's understand the rock cycle, but before we go ahead to the rock cycle, we're going to talk about the water cycle first. It will be easier for us to understand the rock cycle in correlation with the water cycle. We see water in river, sea. All this water, what happens? When there is a lot of heat, the climate is hot, the water evaporates. When it evaporates, it reaches out to the clouds, it condenses. Then it comes back to the earth in the form of snow or rainfall. When it reaches again the water, the river, the whole chain again starts. The whole chain is basically the water cycle. In the same manner, there is a rock cycle that is also into existence. We're gonna understand it. See, to put it in simple terms, the rock cycle is nothing but if we have to club the three types of rock together, it is just the same. First, let's understand the term rock cycle. The process of transformation of one rock to the another is known as a rock cycle. How is an igneous rock formed? When the molten magma erupts out of a volcano, it comes to the surface, it cools down, it solidifies to become igneous rock. Now, this igneous rock is basically broken down, they are eroded. When they get eroded, they're broken down into small fragments. They are deposited from they are picked up from one place and deposited to the another place because of water or wind. Now, when they are deposited, they are again compressed and hardened to form layers of rock. Those are known as sedimentary rocks. When the igneous rock and the sedimentary rock are subjected to a lot of heat and pressure, they change into metamorphic rocks. When these metamorphic rocks are further put under great heat and pressure, they melt. They melt to form molten magma. Again, this molten magma can again cool down, solidify into igneous rocks. But when they form a molten magma, they have to first erupt out of a volcano in the form of lava. This is how the whole cycle of a rock actually is completed. In the same manner, how a water cycle is actually completed. In this complete chapter, we spoke about the layers of earth and the different types of rock. We also spoke about the rock cycle. But most importantly, we also have to understand why are we talking about the rocks. As I mentioned earlier, the rocks are used to go ahead and make houses, buildings, roads. Now, limestone. Let's talk about this. Limestone, basically it's a chalky sedimentary rock. It is used to go ahead and make chalk. In our previous days when we were young, we had our boards where our teachers used to write on with the chalk. That is how it is derived out of the limestone. Gypsum. Gypsum is another type of sedimentary rock. It is formed because of the evaporation of salt and water. Water. It is used to go ahead and manufacture sheet rock. So we're talking about the entire rock process. We're going to talk about the rock cycle and the types of rock. This is where we complete our chapter about inside our earth. The rocks actually form the crust of the earth or the topmost layer of the earth. Now let's go ahead and discuss some questions out of your textbook. Now let's quickly revise the whole chapter in a gist. We spoke about the earth. We spoke about the three layers of the earth. The first one is the crust, the second one is the mantle, and the third one is the core. The crust, thinnest of all layer, and it is basically the solid outer layer. It is 35 kilometers on the continental mass and 5 kilometers on the oceanic floor. The continental mass consists of Cl, that is silica and aluminium. The oceanic floor consists of Sema, that is silica and magnesium. The second layer is the mantle. It is just beneath the crust, and it consists of the hot magma and semi-solid rocks. It is 2,900 kilometers deep below the crust. It is roughly 5 kilometers to 10 kilometers thick on the oceanic floor and 30 kilometers to 50 kilometers on the continental mass. The third layer and the last layer is the core. The core is the deepest and the hottest. The core is further subdivided into outer and the inner core. The outer core, you find metals in hot liquid form, and the inner core, you find iron in its mostly in a solid form. What is the radius of the core? It is 3,500 kilometers, and it is 83% of the total Earth. That is what the core is all about. Now, the textbook also talks about the different types of rocks. Well, first, let's go ahead with the rock, the definition of rock. Any natural mass of mineral matter that makes up the Earth's crust is a rock. This would be a question that would be asked, and that is what you have to answer in a sentence. So you have to understand, if they ask you, define rock, it is any natural mass of mineral matter that makes up the Earth's crust is called a rock. The rocks are further subdivided into three. The first one is the igneous or primary rocks. Second is the sedimentary rock, and the third one is the metamorphic rock. Igneous, the term igneous actually, it is a Latin word, it means fire. How are the igneous rocks formed? If they ask you a question, the answer is, whenever there is a volcano that erupts, the lava comes out on the surface. The lava is nothing but molten magma. When it comes out on the surface and it cools down on the Earth's surface, that is how igneous rocks are formed. The igneous rocks are further subdivided into two, that is the extrusive and the intrusive rocks. Now, extrusive rocks, EX stands for external, so anything it is on the crust. IN is internal, anything that is below the crust, deep inside. So let's understand extrusive rocks. Extrusive rocks is when the volcano erupts, the lava comes out and cools down on the surface. When it cools down on the surface, it is known as extrusive rocks. The grains of such rocks are fine. Like in example, you can give basalt. The second subdivision is the intrusive rocks. Whenever there is a volcano eruption, the lava erupts, but this molten magma actually cools down deep inside the Earth's surface or the Earth's crust. When that happens, they form large grains. You see granite, that is basically a grinding stone that is used to go ahead and grind food grains and spices. The second type of rock that we're going to discuss is the sedimentary rock. The word sedimentum comes from Latin, that means anything that settles down. First, in the event, if they ask you how are sedimentary rocks formed, you have to talk about erosion. What is erosion? There is a rock, out of that rock is broken down into small fragments or small pieces. This is and that is happening because of probably the climatic condition, like the temperature. Those small pieces actually are called sediments. Now they are transported from one place to another place and they are deposited out there because of the wind or the water. Now these loose sediments or these particles or these fragments, they are compressed and hardened to form layers of rocks. Now these layers of rocks are nothing but sedimentary rocks. You see sandstone, this is how they are formed. Now the third type is the metamorphic rock. The word metamorphos comes from Greek, which means change of form. Anything that changes form. Like you have water, it changes its form from water to steam, steam to ice. It takes different forms. In the same manner, when these igneous and the sedimentary rocks are actually put together under great pressure and temperature, they turn down to metamorphic rocks. Like clay changes to slate and limestone changes to marble. Now, if they ask you what is a rock cycle, the rock cycle, what does the term mean? Anything, or the process of transformation of rocks from one form to another, like from igneous to metamorphic, or igneous to sedimentary and sedimentary to metamorphic and metamorphic to again igneous rock. That is what is the rock cycle. I already explained you have to understand rock cycle in comparison with the water cycle. That is how it will be simpler to understand that. Igneous rocks, as we already discussed, is formed because of the volcano that gets erupted. When the volcano gets erupted, the lava comes down and it cools down on the Earth's surface, or it's deep inside the Earth's crust. When these igneous rocks are actually subjected to atmospheric or the climatic conditions, there are fragments that are broken down. They roll down, they crack down, and they hit each other, and they form small particles. This is what is called sediments. And when these sediments are deposited at a different location because of the water or the wind, if there is a lot of pressure that comes upon it and the temperature, because of that, there are layers of rocks that are formed. When these layers of rocks are formed, this is how a sedimentary rock is formed. Now these igneous and sedimentary rock is basically put under great heat and pressure, they change into metamorphic rock. Now if there is further heat and pressure that is put on the metamorphic rock, they melt down to form molten magma. When this molten magma is melt down, whenever there is a volcano that erupts, it can again erupt. It can come down onto the Earth's surface or go deep inside the Earth's crust. It can again cool down and solidify to form igneous rocks. This is how a rock cycle is actually completed. Let us discuss a few questions out of your textbook. The first question that your textbook talks about, what are the 3 layers of Earth? When we did a quick revision of the 3 layers, the 3 layers of Earth are crust, mantle, and the core. The second question that we're going to discuss is, what is a rock? Any natural mass of mineral matter that makes up the Earth's crust or the Earth's surface is called a rock. What are the 3 types of rock? We just discussed the 3 types of rock. Igneous or primary rocks. The second type is a sedimentary rock, and the third type is a metamorphic rock. Primary rock is another word for igneous rock. The next question that we have is, how are extrusive rocks and intrusive rocks formed? Let's come down to extrusive rocks. Whenever there is a volcano eruption, the lava comes down. The volcano erupts, the lava comes down and it cools down on the surface of the earth. It is known as extrusive rocks. When the lava cools deep inside the earth, it is intrusive rock. The next question is, what do you mean by a rock cycle? If the question is actually asked in just one sentence, you have to give the definition. That is, the process of transformation of rock from one to another form is known as a rock cycle. But in the event the same question is asked to be explained in brief, you want to explain the process. The process would be as such that we have already discussed. Whenever there is a volcano eruption, the lava comes down and cools down, probably on the surface of the earth or probably deep inside the crust. This is how the igneous rocks are formed. When these igneous rocks are eroded, they crack down and these fragments roll down, they hit each other. This is what is known as the sediments. These sediments are transported from a specific place to a different place because of the water or the wind. These sediments, when they are put under pressure, they form layers of rock known as sedimentary rocks. When these sedimentary rocks and igneous rocks are again put under great heat and temperature, they form metamorphic rock. Further, when this metamorphic rock is basically put under great heat and pressure, they melt down to form molten magma. When this molten magma is formed, whenever there is a volcano eruption, this molten magma or lava is thrown out during the volcano eruption. This is how a rock cycle is completed. If the question is asked to be explained in brief, this is the answer that we're going to explain. Now, the next question that your textbook talks about is, what are the uses of rocks? Rocks are used to go ahead and build roads, houses, buildings, bridge. These rocks also have minerals in them that can be used as fuel. Like you have coal, you have natural gas. All these are the uses of rocks. The last question that we're going to talk about is, what are metamorphic rocks? Metamorphic rocks are basically rocks which are changed into metamorphic rocks. For example, your textbook talks about the igneous and sedimentary rocks. When they are subjected to great heat and pressure, they change its forms to metamorphic rocks, and this is how metamorphic rocks are actually formed. In this manner, we complete our chapter, Interior of the Earth. In the next chapter, we're going to talk about our changing Earth. In a brief, we spoke about the layers of earth, the different types of rocks, uses of rocks, and the rock cycle in this chapter. But in the next chapter, we're going to talk about our changing earth. How is our earth changing? The volcanoes, the earthquakes, because of the rivers, because of the sea waves, because of the temperature, because of the wind. All these factors actually make our earth change. And that is what we're going to discuss in our next chapter.